Hello and welcome to the 12 Months to Marathon podcast with me, John Hill, the running podcast for the over 35s with Marathon Dreams. Episode 22, the compound effect. Doesn't sound very exciting, that does it? But it's quite pertinent to talk about this now because I'm in week 2 of marathon training, which leads me on to telling you what's going on with me at the moment. So I'm now in week 2 of marathon training and it's interesting so far. So I've stuck to the plan to the letter, obviously move things around because I can't always do the set runs on the days, but I can do the mileage and the runs. So my plan is a sub 3 plan because like I've mentioned before, I am going to have a pop at sub 3. Done some speed work already. The hamstring's holding up quite well. A little bit tight because I've not run this many miles that fast for a while. And also as well, I did a little bit of base building in the 2 weeks before I started marathon training to give me a little bit of a leg up to get ready for it. So it's going well. And actually I had a thought last week towards the end of the first week of marathon training that made me thought, actually, let's do a podcast on the compound effect of training. Now, to set the scene, I talked about base building last week. So if you listen to this podcast and you've got a spring marathon in and you're not training or starting officially training until January, you need to build a base now. You can't do what everybody else does in December and shut up shop, down tools, and dive into a bath of mini chocolates and liqueur. Do you know what I mean? You've got to be smarter than that because you won't be able to hit the ground running on your training plan. So you definitely got to keep some sort of baseline training in place over the next couple of weeks. So what happens when you start training for a marathon? And if you're following a plan where it's got the right mileage on there, because I keep seeing plans, now each to their own, but I'm seeing a lot of plans where I don't believe there's the accurate amount of miles on there. Like I've seen plans where there's only one 20-mile run across 16 weeks. Now, I can only go on my experience of 14 marathons. If there's anybody out there who's run more marathons than me, faster than me, then please help me out. But I don't know how you can get ready for a marathon unless you do at least 3 20-mile runs in training, ideally 4. And if you're going for a pace, I think there's 5 in mine off the top of my head. There's 5 20-mile plus runs, or at least 4, and 1 22-mile as well. So you have to put the miles on the legs, and that's why I want to talk about the compound effect. I think it was Einstein that said compound interest is the best invention in human history. And in marathon terms, in running terms, I've perhaps talked about my 3 M's of running before, which are mindset, mechanics, and mileage. You can't escape the miles. And today, as I record this, I went out for a 14-mile run, which is the longest run I've done in a while since I was marathon training at the start of the year. Absolutely fine. Across the distance, I was fine. I mean, I know I can do that sort of distance. So whilst it's always going to be hard, I mean, I'm never going to be one of those people that sit there and say it's easy. But I know I can do it. So it was manageable. What I noticed was, because on 2 days ago, I did a fairly brutal interval session that I normally skip. And I'll be honest, I've skipped it on the last 2 marathon training cycles because it comes quite early in the training plan. And it's really hard. And it's a mile warm-up followed by 2 miles fast with 3 minutes recovery times 3. Now, I was pushing it a little bit. I should be going a little bit faster over 2 miles, if I'm honest, just on that distance. However, I was pleased with it, and it was brutal. It was 9 miles in just over an hour, and I'm not saying that to impress you. That sort of gives you a context of how quick the 2-mile intervals were. Now, if I'm going for a sub-3 marathon, I have to do that. I have to train myself to run fast. That's just what I have to do. Now, what I noticed today on my 14 miles was, particularly around the middle, was I started to feel it a little bit in my legs, and I could feel that fatigue. And that's a good thing because, like I said on an Instagram reel that I did after the run itself, 12 Months to Marathon, don't forget to follow me over there. You can't rest and recover your way to 26.2 miles. Your rest and recovery comes in the form of looking after your sleep, looking after your diet, making sure that you're strong, physically and mentally, by the way, during the marathon training cycle and around it. But you can't rest and recover your way to 26.2 miles. You have to run your way to 26.2 miles. And there's going to be times in marathon training cycle, if you're doing it correctly, when you hate running a little bit. You won't hate the whole thing, or you shouldn't hate the whole thing, but there's going to be times when you go, oh, I've got to go out again. And even I do that, and I've been running for a while, and I've done thousands and thousands of miles. So the compound effect is... So I thought of this last week in that terminology, which is basically... I was at the end of my first week. I'd done 2 gym sessions and 43 miles running in my first week. And I could feel it, and I was like, I've got 15 weeks left of this. But that's the point, because it adds up over time. Now, what happens is sometimes when people look at marathon training plans, they'll see like a 4-mile run on there. And they'll say, well, why am I going to do that? Because it all adds up, and that's the compound effect. It compounds. And every run that you do, whether you're just trying to get around a marathon, which I don't recommend a lot of speed work for people just trying to get around. I just think you need to get accustomed to putting miles on your legs. But if you're getting faster, then you add the speed work in as well, yeah? So the way I approach it from a coaching standpoint is, right, your goal is to get round, let's get you round, okay? So let's get the miles on your legs, let's get you used to doing the mileage, let's get you practicing on your fueling, and let's get you around. If you're trying to get faster, then you've got to add in speed work and hills. You don't necessarily, in my opinion, have to add in like hill repeats if you're just trying to get around a marathon. It will help you, of course. It won't do you any harm, but my attitude is always, well, let's try and make the training as manageable as possible and just load you up on the miles. And that's the compound effect, okay? That's the way I tend to approach it, because I work with a lot of people over the years. I've been coaching both on the fitness side and on the running side. I've worked with a lot of people who are starting out. Like, I'm not working with athletes, for example, or people trying to go to the next level. I'm working with people who are either trying to get around their first half or marathon, and then maybe people who are looking to, say, break 4 hours, get into the middle 3s, but no one trying to, do the silly stuff. So on that basis, we have to make sure that when you see the plan, it doesn't scare you completely. It should scare you a little bit, because there's a lot of running in there. And I always remember somebody said to me many years ago when I first started writing running plans for people on the side, someone said to me when I gave them a half marathon plan, they said, well, that's a lot of running. I was like, well, welcome to training for stuff. So when it comes to the compound effect, you have to understand that you are going to have to do a lot of miles training for a marathon, but it does all add up, and it's a good thing. And every single run matters. And I've said this before, the good runs, the bad runs, the ugly runs, they all matter. Some days you're going to fly, some days you're going to struggle, some days you're going to feel like it, some days you're not. And it's okay to miss the odd thing, because across 16 weeks, it does add up, but you can't miss weeks at a time. I've heard people say things to me like, oh, I'll see how it goes. You can't see how a marathon training plan goes, in my opinion. You have to be prepared for this. You have to pull out your training plan, and you have to get those runs scheduled in. And if you've entered a marathon, and you're a busy person like most people are with responsibilities and all that, then you have to take that on the chin. And what I mean by that is that if you just exercise when you can, you're one of those people, then those excuses about being busy and all that tend to carry weight. When you're training for a marathon, if you don't follow the plan, that thing's going to chew you up and spit you out, right? So you have to do all the miles, and it will add up over time, yeah? So if you get to your first week of marathon training and you are a little bit fatigued and you're a little bit, I've got 15 weeks left of this, that's okay, because that's the plan. That's part of it. You have to learn that everything's going to compound and everything's going to add on top of each other and build up over time. And be okay with that. And all the runs matter. Everything from the 20-mile training runs to the short 5Ks and 4-milers that are in there as well. It will all add up. And you've got to deal with the first couple of weeks in the way that this is your foundation. Okay? So you might think to yourself, well, I've just done that and I'm tired. How am I going to cope when I'm doing twice that on a weekly basis, or whatever it might go up to? You'll be ready for that as long as you follow the plan. And that's the whole point of the compound effect. These lighter weeks at the start are building up to almost like what I call the inverted horseshoe. So it goes up into like a upward curve and then comes back down again when you taper. And that's the way you've got to look at marathon training. It is a build-up process, so you will get more competent. So this week, for example, when I just did that run then, even though I've ran, loads of miles and I'm fairly experienced, I was like, okay, this is going to be okay. I've been here before. Do you know what I mean? I've done this before. I've gone through this process before. And I know how it feels when you go out for your first longish run. Because 14 miles is a long way. I haven't run that far. Like I said, I haven't run over half marathon distance probably since the start of this year. Probably since the spring when I was training for London Marathon in 2024 as I record this. So yeah, I was comfortable over that distance because I knew I could do it. But there's a little bit of me at the end of last week, which was week 1, that was saying, oh, I'm a bit fatigued here. That's part of the process, and I understand that, and you will too when you go through it. So what I'm trying to say, and here's your takeaway, particularly if you're a first-time marathoner doing a spring marathon next year, because I'll speak to a lot of people who are doing that. When you're going through those first couple of weeks, and it's a little bit challenging, and it's a little bit new and overwhelming, just know that every single run matters, and that compound effect will add up, and you'll be so glad that you did the base building stuff, and you'll be so glad that you built yourself up over those initial couple of weeks, because it will matter at the end. Don't get nonchalant and don't think, oh, I can miss a load of runs at the start because I'll make up for it later. Get the plan, print it off, get it stuck somewhere where you can see it, and start ticking those runs off, because they all matter and they will add up. And I saw that firsthand, and I want to share it with you. And sometimes people will say to me, oh, you're a bit harsh or a bit tough. I'm not tough on people. I'm a realist. If somebody hasn't entered a marathon, fine. But if you've entered a marathon, this is the stuff you need to know. You need to know that the miles matter. All the miles matter, and they will add up over time. So when you get to those first couple of weeks, if you are, say, a January 6th starter, because if you're doing London, for example, or Manchester, your training will start on the 6th of Jan for a 16-week cycle. Get yourself mentally and physically ready for that. You've got a calendar month to get yourself physically or mentally ready, or you've got a calendar month to put yourself backwards, and I wouldn't recommend doing that, because as I record this, there are 18 days until the 23rd of December. Now, those 2 weeks over Christmas, from the 23rd until the 6th, might be a little bit messy with holidays and family stuff and all that. That's fine. So if you're a runner and you've got a spring marathon on and you've got a 6th of January training start, I'd be building your base over the next couple of weeks, getting some runs in, and then planning to what you can do over those 2 weeks, so you're not completely starting from scratch on the 6th. And when you do start on the 6th, if that's when you're starting, or in January, make sure you give yourself the allowance and the freedom to say, okay, this is my compound now. All these runs are going to add up over time, and they're going to matter. So don't skip them, even the small ones, because you might think, oh, what's that going to matter? They all matter. The consistency matters. And the way I feel at the moment on my legs, and I'm getting that sort of fatiguey feeling that I get, which I'm able to cope with because I recover well and I eat well and I do all the stuff nutritionally and I'm strong. I'm getting that little bit of a tingle in my body that's saying, okay, we're off now. We're off to the races. This is getting serious. And that's what you need with marathon training. You need to get yourself physically and mentally ready, because if you're physically ready, it is quite a bit of the battle. The mental battle comes when you hit that wall for the first time and you are 10 miles away from the finish line and you've already done 16. And I remember that when that happened to me. Nobody can take that away from you. You've got to go through that experience. What you can do is get yourself as ready as you possibly can by understanding a training plan, having a training plan, should I say first, understanding it and understanding how it all matters, and understanding the importance of sleep, good nutrition, fueling, the good mental strength and good mental practice. Okay, because it all adds up. So I've had a few conversations with people recently where people are a little bit, I'll play it by ear, I'll see how it goes and all this, or I haven't really done. You've got to be smarter than that out there, especially because that 6th of January, if you started training then, that's going to come around very, very, very fast indeed. And you have to be ready, switched on and good to go. Trust me. If you need any help or you want to talk about coaching, no problem. Let me know. 12 Months Marathon Instagram. Drop me a message. We can have a chat. If we can help you, fantastic. If we can't, at least we asked. And we had a chat about it and we did the best thing. So thank you very much for listening. That's it for the compound effect. Nice and simple. So get yourself mentally and physically ready. I appreciate you listening. Don't forget to drop me a like and a share on the podcast. I appreciate that. A little love heart, or share it with your friends, running friends. I really do appreciate that as well. Hop over to 12 Months to Marathon. Follow me on Instagram if you don't already for all your free daily content and tips. And again, if you do follow me on Instagram, I appreciate it. And if you do listen to me here, I appreciate it. And anything of mine that you share that you feel is valuable and will help others, I really, really appreciate you doing that as well. Let's try and help as many people as possible as we finish this year out and head into New Year and spring marathon season. Thank you very much for listening. As always, I appreciate you all, and I'll speak to you all again very soon.